Good day. My name is Samanin Jim. I'm here upon the request of Venerable Somphone from Wat Arun here in Bangkok, Thailand. Today we have two wonderful guests, my children, Sean Prince and Shannon Ann Prince. And they've come from the United States to visit their monk father. And we were talking earlier on about the differences between a Buddhist spiritual pilgrimage and the Christian tradition that you have grown up within. And you said you had an observation about the difference.
Well, you asked, what is it like for us to have a father that's a monk? And the experience growing up with a Christian family and now having the opportunity to see what the Buddhist monks are about and to have the opportunity to go to the monastery and, like Sean was talking about earlier, feeding the monks, which was a touching experience for me. And I feel that I'm open enough to be able to observe the differences. It's just an interesting, unique opportunity to have.
And what are possible differences that you notice between, let's say, the ministers and priests and the Buddhist monks? Which there's quite a bit of contrast. I mean, can you
well, I think
about
the
that?
general idea is the same. You know, they want the best for their culture and their country and for the people. And we've been brought up with some people that care for us a tremendous amount, and you know, they want the best for us. So they did their best at giving us their version of a good life, you know, and what to do, and you know, it's interesting around the world. Like you pointed out, there's probably some differences. Yeah, the framework of each is different, but I've been seeing many similarities. You know, it's giving of yourself. I mean, you know, denying yourself and giving to others, and I've been seeing more similarities than differences. I guess maybe that's where my mind is kind of wired to see. So that's kind of what I've been noticing.
I've been seeing similarities. The difference is the Buddhist monk practices that I've been observing seems very passive. Very passive. And so the differences with the Christianity, they're more active in a community, and I'm not sure what the differences are.
Well, and only 4 days, that's
right.
Fairly good insight. And on your behalf, I personally find the similarities between good Christians and good Buddhists and good Islamic people and good Sikhs and Hindus, there's very little difference in their values, expectations, and concerns. And that's very helpful as far as I'm concerned. And the people that are able to see that and appreciate that, I think are important people. That you've taken this time out of your lives to go check the differences is a reflection of your values. And you didn't grow up in Buddhist values, so you grew up in Christian values, but you still have these values independently of someone telling you about this. It's certainly from an Asian perspective. So that's an interesting result of your childhood and your experiences.
That we have the values, that we're open to looking at other people's values, that we are finding similar.
And that's very rare, actually, from a Western point of view. And something that you asked me earlier, how do I perceive you as children, older children certainly, adult children, as contrasted to what might you be as children. And I find you pleasantly wonderful in in a sense that you are good people. Regardless of what tradition you grew up in, yourselves individually are good people and value reasonable things. And you've chosen a lifestyle that certainly has had some good times and bad times, but I think that's not unusual for anyone. And now that you have this opportunity to see let's say, a bigger contrast between the choices that your parents made, you still have to organize that in some way, and I think you'll be able to do that just fine without taking sides, having opinions, or having extreme criticisms of right and wrong. I don't think you're going to do that. There's lots of ways of being right. And I think that's what you're doing, is noticing that and appreciating that.
Right.
And that's, I think that's a characteristic that Western people mostly don't have. You've seen tourists here and what they're doing and how they've lived their lifestyle. They're mostly really big, and they're mostly looking at very superficial things. Already you're not doing that, and you didn't come here with that as a expectation.
Mm-hmm.
You came here with expecting to learn more about it,
Mm-hmm.
and to get more involved than any other kind of tourist.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of it has to do with getting to know more about you. You are certainly the apex of interest. That's why we're here, and why we're probably more open to figuring out what it's all about. I mean, I certainly appreciate all of the effort that the people when I was growing up put into being concerned about my spirituality. I appreciate that, and just but the way that my life has gone, I've come to become a person that is curious about lots of different things and philosophies. Not really philosophies, but I enjoy culture. I like to learn about other things, and that's what's nice about a spiritual journey, is I'm still on one. I know my direction. I'm pretty clear on where I'm going, but I still like to. I think it adds to the more you know about the world, the better off I am. I'm not speaking for anybody else, but the more I know, the better I feel about existing in this world.
But I think with that attitude, the better off the world is. And certainly, I feel that growing up with what I feel are Christian values, I'm not here to change that, but I'm valuing the opportunity to observe, what is valuable and what the practices are of what you've chosen to do. And I find it very interesting, and I think that makes a better world if we can then share it with our friends without being opinionated and judgmental. That makes a better place.
Well said.
And it's also true that I didn't even have access to Buddhist teachings until I was 30. It just wasn't available. And so I was 10 years younger than you when I had an opportunity to investigate this, and also grew up with Christian values, but and being able to appreciate the Christian values insofar as I was able to go ahead and explore other options from that early training, rather than deciding that I couldn't do that. It was not that way for me, and it doesn't seem to be that way for you. And one question I have to you, I think Shauna and I have very similar humor characteristics, and I think that's what we share together, and I think what you and I share together is a more emotional, a deep emotional feeling and concern about issues, and that I see how important those feelings are to you. And I think that's what we share in common also. You're not as funny as he is. But
I know what's funny though.
yeah, your funny is different than his funny. But again, it's really two different ways of perceiving the world, and I appreciate the differences, and I actually think that both of those conditions are something that I value within myself. And it seems that you've caught that somehow. Maybe it's contagious. Something like that.
Nice to get your take on us as well, from your impression of us.
Yeah, you're much
that was-
different than tourists. You're not a tourist. And I'm not sure how you got here without being a tourist, but you seem to have missed that completely. And I think it may be that you will never know what a tourist would actually do if they went someplace.
It's nice to be able to meet with someone who knows the local places to go and the local things to do. I think that's a wonderful opportunity that most tourists don't get.
Yeah.
Well, that's true, but they also don't have your attitude and, let's say, point of view that you brought here. And it's not something that I told you to do. It's something you came here on your own with. And I think you probably don't know how different that is. Because I've been here for 3 years, I've seen people come and go, and the difference is really quite striking. And what happens is you haven't been here long enough to see that. If I pointed it out to people who were in a hotel or whatever, and how differently they walked, perceived things, and what they expected, which would be entirely different than what you had expected from the very beginning. Regardless of whether I was a monk or whether you knew someone here or not, you just showed up with that. And that's very special. So I just want to let you know that it's appreciated and surprising. I'm really happy you did that.
I feel like we're having a good time. You know,
Absolutely.
we're on the boat, and it's good to, have someone close to you here and be able to, enjoy it with as well. I saw some people that weren't having as good a time, so I think it's safe to say we're having a really good time here.
You mentioned seeing this show on YouTube.
Yes.
Tell us that story.
I don't know how I guess, I'd have to remember where I saw the videos. Perhaps you told me they were on. I can't remember. It was one of the first things I did see, though. Possibly it was a link to your blog. Is that possible?
Could possibly be.
I did see it, and Venerable Sinphone, and you were talking.
And now you're here.
And now I'm here. It's quite
It's a big. Now
kind
you're
of
on
one
the
of those
television.
Never thought I
or
would
the internet.
be on one of these episodes. That's something I never expected.
Well, you just never know what's going to happen
Yeah.
when you get on the plane.
So yeah, and it was a neat experience, and that was a good way for me to, rather than just reading it. I mean, there was another.
Dimension?
It was another example or another avenue of seeing who you were, and seeing you and on the screen, and similarities, and I think in the way we look. I mean, some
I think
people
so.
said, that looks like your dad.
Is there is it similar?
But here
I
you
think so,
talk,
too.
and we're kind of a little bit of who you were before we flew on over here.
It's
Yeah, I have
really
always seen the
remarkable.
similarities between Sean and Jim. Absolutely.
That's very nice. Seeing
Along with the disposition and definitely, and the
quirky,
physical
strange,
feature.
odd attitude.
Yeah,
that
certainly the
works.
physical feature.
You don't have to be a Buddhist monk to have a strange, quirky, strange attitude.
Well, is this on just YouTube, or is this also on Thai TV? Or
Yeah, it'll be on Thai TV.
great.
Yeah.
At
Yes, they-
midnight.
Yes, at 4:30 in the morning.
I hope it replays a lot, and we can get
A replay, yes.
we can
Royalties?
get royalties from it.
From the replays, yes.
No, it was quite an experience.
I'm
It
sure
was
Zaire will
nice.
buy it.
it was nice to see that, along with the blog. Lots of information about you on the blog.
The stories.
Yes, the
What about the
stories.
stories?
Because we wanted to. There was a lot of information there for us to pull from before we even came here. So there were less surprises.
You were reading the first story, The Voyage of the Dreammaker, and having someone who wrote a book, now that you not only know the author, but you're the daughter. What is that like?
I may be reading into it, but I'm seeing that you've taken your stories from your experiences that you've had over the years with your physical journeys along with your meditation journeys. I'm being able to share what you've been up to. That's what I'm reading into it anyway.
I think it's there. I mean, that's why I wrote it. To some extent, I wrote it for myself when I would be even younger than you, for a younger adult, to have some, let's say, journal of early questions, and had it debated or discussed within a manuscript or a dialogue or a narrative, such that it was something that other people wondered about. And I actually wrote the book for my 20-year-old self, with the idea that it was a book I would have liked to have read when I was 20 years old, but simply was not available. And again, the Buddhist humor book I was asked to write that by Venerable Sun Phon, and that is an entirely different perspective on all of the different traditions, and the fact that Buddhists are very funny people, although they don't write about it. And I was in a unique position to be able to, let's say, capture some of those moments, and they're more shareable now. And it's something that you would have to wait around quite a long time for within the monastic environment to, stumble over these stories. In fact, in another week or so, we might have a story or two of our own that just happened to happen, between here and there, and you go, oh yes, that's something that's going to get somewhere. But it's fun to capture those moments, and I think this opportunity here is to pay attention when you're at that 2 weeks in the other place,
Right.
finding out what the other places are like, and finding things that you would never expect.
I know since Thailand is so different for us, and your lifestyle is so different, there have already been a few stories that are memorable.
And what
for
would
me.
be one of them?
More than our exchanges, what we've had the opportunity to see with, sleeping at a monastery, and, meeting all of your friends, and getting to walk around the little village that
Isn't that wonderful?
it is wonderful.
And it's so much different than what you would expect if you only were living in America. If you saw
Right.
the video of this, you would say, oh, poor people. And when you get here, there's no poor about them.
No.
And there's happiness and family and children playing and people living their lives and doing the things that they do, and without the idea of, well, if it was only better. And I think that attitude is more of a problem in America than
Right.
certainly here. When it's easy for them to say, well, we'll just, go
Mark.
sit under a tree and have your drink and watch the dog in the shirt walk by, take 20 pictures of it.
I have a little bit of experience with, seeing some other countries,
Yes,
and
yes.
and I get the feeling from Thailand that it's real kind of organic living, and people love their country and take good care of it, and seem happy and comfortable in it. Well, I'm pulling off of one particular experience I had where everything was just chaos, and I was coming here hoping that it wasn't going to be like that place, and I feel very comfortable here as opposed to some other countries in the area that I've been to.
What about yourself as a farm girl?
From California. I have been happy with our experience. People are very nice and kind, and I feel that people are comfortable with where they are and accepting of that.
And another thing which you haven't mentioned about, you feel safe here.
Yes.
Yes.
There's not
Yes.
even a hint of an issue.
No.
No.
And that's something that it's actually hard to see because it's so gone. There's nowhere that we've gone, and certainly there's nowhere where we'll go, where it seems like there's a problem.
Right.
And that's much different than in the West.
Yeah, like the driver yesterday was happy to just show us around, and he was excited to kind of. He had pride in his area and his country,
Yeah.
and that showed. Like in that particular example, and I'm glad I just thought of that because that's a good example of, the people and
Yeah, is it just
in
a-
relation
yeah.
to their country.
Just an ordinary driver that you would meet in America, that I think that my feeling is that they do feel better and excited about what they're doing, especially showing foreigners about, and it's a very natural thing that mostly you don't see in America, although actually people are really polite to foreign people in America, and
Right.
and that's I've heard that a number of times, that Americans are very polite. And certainly traveling around in the 70s with 3 llamas, that was about as strange as you can get, although in California it may not have been as strange as some other places. Anyway, we're through it again. We've gone through another half hour. I
Nice.
want to thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for allowing us to visit them this day. I want to thank Venerable Somphone from Wataroon in Bangkok, Thailand, for allowing us to have this talk. Thank you. Well, you
Great.
managed to not die.